Shalom, welcome to Rob on the Rock. Monolatry or idolatry? Which of these terms was used by biblical writers to describe foreign religion? Monolatry or idolatry? Which term is an important term in the theology of those who have new life in Messiah Yeshua, those who are part of his ecclesia? Which of these terms is important for them, monolatry or idolatry? Today we're going to dive into this topic. Stay tuned. Shalom, welcome to Rob on the Rock. I'm Rob Vanoff, and today we're going to look at the word idolatry. You see the Greek word here, idolatria. Idolatria. That is a contraction of two words. So it's a word made up of two Greek words. The first word you see there is idol. An idol in English is the transliteration of this Greek term, idol, and it's from the word image, like a graven image or a statue. And the second word, latria, comes from the Greek word to serve. It comes from the verb that corresponds to the Hebrew la'avod, to serve. So literally it means idol service, service to an idol. And what's important for us to recognize here is idolatry is simply, in our English term, a contracted transliteration. And I say it's contracted because we only have the one L in idolatry, but the Greek idololatria, you have the doubling of the lamed there, the lambda, idololatria. It just becomes idolatry. But the idol and latri come right from the Greek. And this term was coined by monotheistic Jews in Greek, of course, in their Jewish Greek language during the Second Temple period. So this is not a term you will find in ancient Greek literature. This is a Jewish Greek term specifically. And it abbreviates, while it's not used in the Septuagint, the LXX, that's the ancient Greek translation tradition, and there's some fluidity in that tradition. There's more than one manuscript tradition for the ancient Greek, but the point is that the concept of conveying the Torah in the Greek language in the ancient world, we roughly call the Septuagint. It does not have this term idolatria, nor does the Greek translations of the Psalms or the prophets have idolatria. However, it is, we see these words in proximity. We see idol and latruo, the verb to serve or to even sacrifice to, thuo, in proximity. So we know that the Greek-speaking Jews knew their Tanakh, and they coined this term to be a quick reference, a quick description of this abominable behavior. So even just to reiterate, even though this term, idolatria, does not occur in the Greek traditions of the Tanakh, it is used in the apostolic writings, and it's used as a reference to those places in the Tanakh tradition where service to idols is in the text. So it's coined by monotheistic Jews in the Greek language during the Second Temple period. The term abbreviates the commandment from the 10 words prohibiting the serving of idols. And it literally means, as I said, idol serving or service to idols. And before I advance the screen here, I'll just share, for example, from the 10 words in Deuteronomy 5. It begins in verse 6, I am Adonai your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee any graven image. And this is that word idol then. Or any likeness of anything that is heaven above, that is in earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. You shall not bow down yourself to them, nor serve them. So even though we don't have the word idolatria specifically here, we have the word idol, and we have the verb for latria, service here. For I am Adonai, your Elohim, a jealous Elohel, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So that's from Deuteronomy 5, verses 6 through 10. And what I want to do now is just go and show some examples of idolatria. And the reason I chose this topic this week is because our weekly Torah portion is Balak. And this is where we learn about the daughters of Moab enticing the children of Israel into idol worship. And I'm going to provide here the NETS, that's the New English translation of the Septuagint. That's available online if you want to find it for free. Translation, so this is the ancient or unancient Greek translation from the Hebrew. And of course, this is translated again from Greek into English. And Israel stayed in Satim, that's Shittim in Hebrew, and the people were profaned by whoring after the daughters of Moab. And they invited them, that is, they here is in the feminine, so we know it's the daughters. The daughters invited them to the sacrifices of their idols, and the there is feminine, their idols. And the people ate of their sacrifices and did obedience to their idols. So it's feminine. And this is that word idol, like we saw. And in Hebrew, the text actually, though, is Eloheihen, their Elohim, their gods. And the hen, Eloheihen, means of the women. So the gods of the daughters of Moab. But what we notice here is if the Hebrew says Eloheihen, why would the Septuagint say their idols? Why wouldn't it say their theoi? Plural for theos. And we see this again also, for example, in 1 Kings 11:7. Also, here's an English rendering of the Septuagint. And thus he, that is Solomon, did for all his foreign wives. They were offering incense and sacrificing to their idols. Well, again, we have Eloheihen, their gods. But in these two places, in the Torah portion here, in Numbers 25, in passage from the prophets, 1 King 11, we see that the Greek translators chose to use idol instead of theos, or the plural of theos would be theoi. So the question is this a legitimate reading? Are the Greek translators here covering up the truth of the Hebrew text? So the question is, are the gods of the daughters of Moab, are they real gods, or are they idols? This claim that they are idols is the claim that they are false, that they are false religion, that they have eyes but cannot see, as the prophets of old say. They have ears but cannot hear. They have mouths but cannot speak. So I suggest that even though the Torah uses Eloheihen here, and the prophet in 1 Kings says their idols, their Eloheihen, that it is absolutely accurate for them to use the word idol here. Well, if you think that maybe I'm pushing too much by saying, no, they're actually covering up the truth, those are real gods, and calling them idols is really a disservice to the Greek reader. Well, let's continue here then. Look at Revelation 2:14. These are the words of Yeshua himself to John. And this is what Yeshua says: I have a few things against you, because you have some there. I believe this is in the church in Ephesus, if I remember. I could be wrong. It's one of the epistles to the 7 churches. Those who hold the teaching of Balaam, who kept teaching Balak, that's our Torah portion, to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit sexual immorality. So here Yeshua himself gives the approval, if you will. He legitimizes that particular rendering into Greek. That rendering from the Septuagint in Numbers 25 and in 1 Kings, where Eloheihen, their idols, are translated as, or their Eloheihen, their what we might think as gods, as their idols. So the word Elohim then has a lot of flexibility in the Torah. It doesn't always point to the same referent. Context is king here. So Yeshua himself interprets Numbers 25, the first few verses of Numbers 25, where the daughters of Moab entice the sons of Israel to worship their Eloheihen as their idols. And we can continue and look in the apostolic writings for this theme. 1 Corinthians 10:14 says, "Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry." So idolatry is a problem both among Jews and Gentiles. Fleeing from idolatry is for both Jews and Gentiles. There were Jews that were idolaters, and there were Gentiles that were idolaters, and they all needed to flee. What did they flee to? They flee to monotheism, to knowing who is the true God. The one true God is the God of Israel, as revealed in the person and teachings of Yeshua, the Messiah. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10, just a little bit earlier than the verse we saw there, verse 7, "Do not be idolaters, as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and stood up to play." What's he talking about? He's citing the Torah, Exodus 32, which is the Torah portion of the golden calf. He's bringing our attention back to the golden calf incident where Israel worshipped an idol. He's calling the golden calf an idol. It doesn't matter that the idol had the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, right? As it says, "This is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God who brought you out of Egypt." Obviously, that's not true. It doesn't matter that the idol was called by the name of the true God. It didn't make that idol real. It didn't make their worship of that idol real or legitimate. No, this is a place where Israel themselves became idolaters. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and stood up to play. Continuing on, Galatians 5:19 through 21. "Now the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry," there you go, idolatria, there it is, "sorcery, enmities, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, disputes, dissensions, factions, envying, drunkenness, carousing, and things like these, of which I forewarn you, just as I have forewarned you, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God." So this is for Gentiles and for Jews. Flee idolatry. Paul also writes in Colossians 3:5, "Therefore consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which amounts to idolatria." Idolatry. So we have it from Yeshua, we have it from Paul, and here we have it from Kepha, for Peter. 1 Peter 4:1 through 3. "Therefore, since Christ has suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same purpose, because he who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, so as to live the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for the lusts of men, but for the will of God." Baruch Hashem. "For the time already past is sufficient for you to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles, having pursued a course of sensuality, lusts, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries." Here we have the plural form of idolatria. It covers any strange worship, and it covers Gentiles as well as Jews. So it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or a Gentile. Idolatry is still something that is in the world, and that is forbidden, as we saw from the 10 words itself. That means the commandment from the 10 words is not just for Jews, but also for Gentiles. That when the foreign peoples, pagans, when they worship their idols, their imagined deities, it is a sin. It is called idolatry, the service of idols. And implicated in that is that they are deaf, dumb, and blind, and they are unable to save. That is the clear, consistent message of the prophetic tradition of Israel. There are some out in the Christian world, like Michael Heiser and others, who are promoting this monolatry worldview. But I state clearly now, monolatry does not express the faith of any of the saints of old, whether from the Tanakh or from the apostolic writings. Again, monolatry does not express the faith of any of the Kedoshim, any of the Hagioi, any of the saints. Monolatry is not a term that applies to the disciples of Yeshua. It's not a term that applies to Moses, to Noah, to Jonah, to King David, to any of the prophets. So if someone's trying to sell you a worldview of monolatry for Israel and for the people of God, don't buy it. It's not a term that describes believers. It's a term that describes what the monotheistic Jews call idolatry. Rather, the saints were all and are all monotheists. And the term that monotheist believers use for foreign worship, doesn't matter what nationality you are, what ethnicity you are, if you're not worshiping the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in the name of the incarnate Son, Yeshua, the term for that worship is idolatry. Shalom.